Welcome back, basketball world, to another episode of Spittin Hoops, our weekly, but we missed last week podcast. But we're back. 10th episode.
We are back.
Anthony's here.
We are back, baby.
Yeah. So welcome back to another episode of our podcast. Usually this is just a therapy session for the teams that we really like. And it definitely might be that again today with our resident Boston Celtics fan, Anthony, though. We missed last week, so you had some extra free time. What were you up to? How have you been?
Good to see you again, Max. Definitely going to need a bit of a therapy session here. You could throw on your psychologist hat for a second and ask how it made me feel to watch the Celtics series. It's been good though, man. I was just in Puerto Rico. Love that place. They know their basketball down there. A lot of Miami Heat fans. So I was trying to do my best to talk a lot of smack, but I didn't really have much to say. So, but very beautiful time off.
Yeah, probably nice to not be in Boston during this time. Yeah, that's tough. But since the last podcast, a lot of stuff has happened. I think we missed the ending of the Knicks Heat series. We missed the ending, I think, of the Lakers series. No, we didn't. We covered that as well. But we missed a few endings of the series. This episode, we're just kind of going to go through the Celtics Heat, the Nuggets and Lakers, and the Celtics and Heat do play Game 4 tonight. We're kind of going to assume that the Heat are going to win this series. So we'll talk about it in that way, no matter who wins tonight. And then should that not happen, I mean, we'll have stuff to talk about. So we'll see. We'll see.
Hey, well, something I like about what you're saying, we've been consistent on this podcast that we have been so wrong in so many of our predictions. So maybe that's the spark that the Celtics need, that we think that the series is over by default, for them to break history once again.
It would be on brand for us to literally make a podcast with the assumption that like a team is going to be eliminated and then they win 4 straight. Like it would be extremely on brand. But there is one team that one of us has been consistently right about, and that's the Denver Nuggets. And that's you, who predicted them to win the Western Conference going into the playoffs. They easily do so. 4-0 sweep of the Lakers. Overall, I thought it was a very dominant series. Extremely impressive.
Absolutely incredible showing by, I think this is now I'm going to put him up there, especially if he wins the chip, but best player in the world, Nikola Jokic. Absolutely incredible player, unbelievable. I think it just says more about the Nuggets than this did about the Lakers. I didn't think the Lakers played particularly poorly. I think it just had more to do with, especially all these games were close. All of them were single-digit games. The Lakers were within one or up by one in the last 5 minutes of pretty much every single game. And the Nuggets were just excellent at finishing the game. So it wasn't like the Nuggets were head and shoulders necessarily blowing them out every single game, that kind of thing. But in the things that matter, they were head and shoulders ahead. Jokic is incredible. And Jamal Murray, once again, has taken his play to another level when it matters the most.
Incredible. I think that's, to me, was what stood out the most. Like, I have no worries about Jokic in the playoffs, and I've never had them. Like, we've talked about it for a while. Like, Jokic historically is like an amazing statistical playoff riser. It doesn't always equate to wins, and I would argue that was because of his teams previous. But we're seeing it right now. I mean, he's playing literally better than his regular season play, I would argue. Statistically, it doesn't necessarily reflect that right now. But he's doing this against 7 straight games of AD, putting up the same stats as he does in the regular season, right? Yep. Incredibly impressive. And then like Jamal Murray, he had 32 a game in this series, something like that. It's bubble Murray, and it's fantastic. I did want to say one thing. I think we need to really credit their depth. Their 6th best player is Bruce Brown, and like Bruce Brown is fantastic player, and they basically stole him off the Nets for a free first-round pick last year. Like, great front office move. I don't like Aaron Gordon as like a centerpiece of a team, to be honest. Like, I've never been a big Aaron Gordon fan, but if he's your 5th best player, your team's in a great spot. And they took that risk like 2 years ago on that trade, and it was a steep price that they paid, but it's worked out in the long run. They paired Barton and Monty Morris last offseason to make KCP, who's played basically, I think, the 4th most minutes in the series for that team. Great front office moves. MPJ, he's there at the 13th pick. He has back injury stuff, but they took the risk. and home run arguably with him. I mean, the pick before him was Jerome Robinson, if I remember correctly. It was or Shea. It was one of the two Clippers back-to-back picks in that draft.
Right.
But that's long-winded way of saying I'm incredibly impressed by this team, but this organization, the team building, the coaching, incredible.
It's you were very, very high on them, especially by the time we got to Suns Nuggets series, though. I mean, you were saying this from the jump. You were even more gung ho on them beating the Suns than I was,
Absolutely.
and you were crediting to their best player being the best player in the world, and their second best player being. I think we're even past Bowl Murray at this point with Jamal Murray. I think that
Yeah.
was what he is turning into, at least for now. And as for the depth, I couldn't have said any better. I mean, Bruce Brown sometimes Bruce Brown's their third best player. Sometimes it's Michael Porter Jr., sometimes it's Aaron Gordon, sometimes it's KCP. And they all just get it done. And they all average 12. I mean, I think those four guys, they're 4 through 6 average between 15 and 12. And that's perfect. That's all you need. KCP is ripping threes through the net.
Fantastic. And he plays so hard. Like that's another thing about KCP. He's playing against LeBron, who's his agent, and he's like fighting for his life out there. It's amazing.
It's incredible. There was also something beautiful about this series, even though the Lakers lost all 4 games. They were all pretty competitive. And it felt like the hoop was so wide in this series. We saw the number of crazy shots Jamal Murray hit, and then Jokic in game 1, and then in game 3 again with those ridiculous threes. Even LeBron trying to alley-oop a pass that goes into the net, and then from there he just starts cashing threes like crazy. It was a great series. I'm disappointed that it wasn't able to go longer.
Yeah, I'm like it was a very entertaining series and felt close despite it being 4-0. But then I also come out of the series just totally feeling like the Nuggets were by far the better team. Like it kind of goes both ways in a weird way. But like Austin Reeves, for example, like he couldn't miss for like a few games in there. Like I don't know. I thought I agree with you. Fantastic series. And the finals with the Heat inevitably is going to be another just series of playoff risers with, you're going to have Jokic, Murray, who are both playoff risers. Then you're going to have Jimmy the ultimate playoff riser, right? That's going to be fun to watch, right? And I guess we can transition to there tonight, Celtics Heat. I assume.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Real quick before we switch over to the pain section. I think you know this, but how many All-Star appearances does Jamal Murray have? And how many All-NBA appearances does Jamal Murray have? Nothing. What? I don't know if he's ever averaged more than 20 a game in the regular season before this past year.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's incredible. He goes from a guy that is probably ranked in the regular seasons by their standards like 40th or something, and then come playoff time, he turns into this top 15 level player in the NBA. It's an unbelievable, remarkable transformation.
I fully agree, and I think it's just another prime example of how different playoff basketball is to like regular season basketball. Jamal Murray also defensively, when the game is slower, it feels like he's a lot better defensively than when it's just fast break down the court the whole time. And it makes sense. Like on offense, he's a little bit more of a pacey type guy. He's gonna go slow, go fast. But on defense, he can totally hold up, that's also what's really impressive to me. Sorry, I guess now we're talking more about this series. But like defensively, the Nuggets also had no business holding up this well against the Lakers. And I know like Austin Reeves was scoring a good amount. You had a few good games out of AD, but like LeBron also couldn't shoot, which really helped their situation. But Michael Porter Jr. is like not a great defender, and he really looked a lot better than normal. Like in this series, Jamal Murray, not traditionally known as a great defender, was great, I thought, defensively in this series. Aaron Gordon, I thought was their best defender in the regular season, and he was almost more of just like hustle energy guy. And although that was like great, it was less of like clamps Aaron Gordon, so
totally
insane. Yeah. It's just another example of the difference between playoff and regular season basketball.
Absolutely. And you had a great mirroring of what the Nuggets and the Heat both kind of do that we've seen in the postseason. Can you reiterate what you were saying?
The playoff rising, that stuff, or Yeah, exactly. So it's like when the game gets slower, right? Then the Heat, who have played 70% of a zone defense all season, they're a lot more used to it. They can play like that. And then you have on the other end, you know, when 3-point shooters aren't making their shot, they can dump it into Jimmy Butler, who's 55% from like the mid range, like constantly, which is where you want to be efficient. And it's just like a different play style, right? Since it's not as much as like layups or threes as like the regular season is, right? At some point, you just got to put the ball in the basket in the playoffs, right?
Oh yeah.
Which yeah, I think is fantastic. I guess now we'll move on. Celtics Heat. To be honest, I would like to start with the Heat. I feel
Yep.
like they deserve kind of that credit. They're up 3-0. Really, I didn't feel like any of these games were super competitive outside of game two, particularly. I know they won game one by 7, but that really felt like the Heat were kind of in control to me for a good amount of that. But game two, it felt like the Celtics are up 10 with like 6-7 minutes left, if I remember correctly. Jimmy scores one, Jimmy scores two, gets into Grant Williams' face, scores another one, calls him too short, and then the momentum kind of switches, right? Is that moment why that happened? No, like it's very possible Jimmy just scores anyways, right? But that's
Yep.
kind of what the media ran with, right?
Mhm.
To me, this is incredible. This is a Spoelstra masterclass. Defensively, they're playing with guys like Max Strus and Duncan Robinson, who, again, in the regular season, they're known and arguably are pretty terrible defenders. And somehow Spoelstra can have them on the court at the same time. Sometimes it's a masterclass.
It's amazing, and it is a combination of a head coach who is, I think, really starting to get his groove, because
Mm-hmm.
he was already top 15 all time. Maybe
Yep.
critics can kind of point at, oh, you had LeBron, you had D Wade, you couldn't get it done in a couple of those series. Where's the criticism for you now? He has shown pretty consistently that he can take a team, especially with a guy like Jimmy Butler, and have him rise to the occasion. And you're combining that with these undrafted players where Jimmy was the 30th player. Even Bam was the 13th overall pick. I saw something, I think it's Tyler Zeller is their highest drafted player.
Cody Zeller. Yeah.
Sorry, Cody Zeller.
Fourth overall.
Fourth
Yeah.
overall,
Like,
yeah. That goes to show sort of where where he goes in that hierarchy. I think it's a combination of you getting Eric Spoelstra, who is in now entering the prime of his coaching career, I believe, with a guy like Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, who knew that they could beat the Celtics last year. And I think, honestly, I was frightened about them the whole time. I was frightened about them when they went into the play-in game against the Hawks. I was relieved and grateful that they lost to the Hawks, because
mm-hmm.
I thought, oh, hey, the Bucks will kind of, the Bucks will be slowed down by them a bit. That obviously didn't happen. You get Eric Spoelstra, you get this ragtag group of guys who Jimmy Butler, well, I've never seen a player like him before, galvanize these guys into thinking that they're stars and that they can do everything they want because they have his full confidence. Tyler Hero is not even back. When he was first announced as out, I don't think anybody besides maybe a few passionate Heat fans thought, oh, that doesn't really mean anything because it's in the middle of the Bucks series and you're not gonna make it that far anyways. And now they have him to look forward to coming back, which I believe the report said back when in the first round he got injured, he'd be back in the finals. So if he comes back into the finals, that is going to be a whole new thing. I'm not sure. He was out and they suddenly turned it up and they started going crazy. I'm not even going to make a conversation about like whether he helps or hinders. Obviously, I'm sure he does. And that's not what this is about, but it's the combination of that and a rookie head coach who we'll get into the Celtics maybe a bit later. And I have a lot of thoughts about that, but I don't think he was ready for this moment. And that's okay. He's a rookie head coach. That happens. That's life. And you saw that. And it's tough not to say. People kind of make these different excuses. They're more talented on paper, etc. The better team is winning these games. You pointed it out. Game one, the Celtics were within 4-7 the whole fourth quarter, pretty much. I'm a Celtics fan. You can see it. You can see how the Heat are playing. You can see the confidence, the bravado that they have. They were never going to lose. That felt like a 15-point lead, not a 4-point lead, not a 5-point lead. And they were fine, like you said. So the score was close, but it did not indicate the dominance that the Heat had. Same thing with game two. Maybe the Grant Williams thing got Jimmy into extra gear. I'm not sure what the final score. I know they won by maybe 6 or something on free throws in the end and everything, but I still think they were going to come back and win that game. They in these close games, when you're looking at two teams, the team that you feel more confident is going to come out on top is the team that is significantly better. That's why the Nuggets beat the Lakers. That's why the Heat are beating and now throttling in game 3 the Celtics, where they kind of just rip their heart out. It's very impressive what the Heat are doing, man.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head every part of that. To be honest, I just really want to reiterate the part about like, sure, the Celtics going into the series looked like the better team on paper. Like up and down the board, they've been outplayed, outmatched, and like I'm not sure if a different coach, if you just popped in Ime right now, maybe they'd have one more win. It's like I don't know. It'd be really difficult for me to argue that this series in this current state of both of those teams, that you could only change a few things and the series would go a different way. Like there would need to be mass changes across the board for there to be a chance. What's insane to me is like Gabe Vincent scoring 17 a game in this series. You guys like Caleb Martin 17, 19, 18, 19, like things like that. Like at some point, there's 5 guys on the Heat scoring above like 15 a game in this series. Like that's really hard to stop. And what other teams can do that? Like that's kind of the other place where I'm at with this. Like I think the Raptors. This team reminds me of the Raptors basically, but the Raptors in 2019, they had their star, but then they had like 6 or 7 other guys who played defense and they are just shot creators. They can make their own shot. They can, like in a game 7, 2 or 3 of those guys is going to be hitting. Like, you know what I'm saying? And then you're going to have Jimmy Butler, hopefully. And that's why in these close games, Spoelstra can just mix and match. Like Kyle Lowry can ride the bench in the last 6 minutes because Gabe Vincent is shooting like 55% from 3. Like they are just able to do all that. And because, you know, I think the undrafted thing's a little bit, everyone's undrafted. That's crazy. Like these are good players, but you're right. The egos are a little bit of a side. It's not Jordan Poole with the $140 million contract coming in saying, yo, I want to be a starter. It's Max Strus who's like, I'm about to hit restricted free agency and make money for the first time in my life. You know, like I'm very impressed with this team. And I can't believe it. I cannot believe the way this series is going, and I can't believe the Heat. It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's one of those things. I think you make a great point, honestly, in everything you're saying, and especially that I can't believe it. We didn't get a chance to record this podcast last week.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I thought the Celtics were going to win in a tough 6, maybe even 7. I don't know. What would you have said before this?
Going into the series, I was pretty on the fence because I thought there was like, I wasn't impressed by the 76ers by the end of that series. No. Like as much as the Celtics did win that series, it wasn't like the Sixers you know, so I was going to kind of come in and be like, I think it's probably a 7-game series. There was no way I could have thought there would be 3-0 without like a severe injury. Like I just would have assumed one of these games, the Heat would be cold and Tatum would have 40. It's like, and maybe that happens tonight.
Yeah, like, right. Sure. Maybe in the gentleman's sweep game. But I mean, it's what you said. The Celtics were a mentally tougher team than the 76ers, and that's why they beat them in game 7. Being mentally tougher than the Sixers is not good enough to win a championship.
Pistons might be mentally tougher than the Sixers.
I
said the Pistons might be mentally tougher than the Sixers.
They damn right might be. The Hawks might be.
Actually, that's a good point. They actually might be.
I mean, we're not going to talk quite yet about Celtics, but just as a comparison, how I thought, you know, the Heat could have won was Jimmy goes nuclear at least 4 of 7 games because the C's could win one nuclear Jimmy game, or they could also lose a non-nuclear Jimmy game. So that already happened, the non-nuclear one last night, even though he still played amazing. Like he still gets an A for the game, even though his stats aren't amazing. He didn't shoot fantastic. Second one for me was City died of Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, Kevin Love, Duncan Robinson, Kyle Lowry, Max Strus, who at the time were all averaging between 12 and 9 points per game. Let's see what they averaged. Besides Jimmy, who's at 26, of course. Caleb Martin, 19. Bam Adebayo, 18. Gabe Vincent, 18. Duncan Robinson, 12. Max Strus, 12. Kyle Lowry, Kevin Love, 7 and 4, but they're impactful and important 7 and 4s. Let's see. Okay, so that's 4 guys who averaged over 17 a game. Jason Tatum, 26 kind of empty points per game. Then Jaylen Brown, 16.7. That's the comparison. That's what needed to happen for the Celtics to need to win. Tatum need to have played well. There's this phenomenon that happens with the Celtics, with a lot of teams. I see it a lot with the Celtics because I watch, I would assume I watch a comparable number of Celtics games that you watch Warriors games, right? You can really feel it in a way where if I'm watching a Jazz game, I don't know the vibes of the team very well. The Celtics have this thing that happens to them, especially against a strong team where can't quite pin if it's imposter syndrome. We don't deserve to be here with Tatum and Brown. Are we really these guys? Not that they don't have the ability. Tatum said it himself. I'm one of the best players in the world. I believe him when he says it. There's something that's not quite there. And the whole team kind of gets in this interesting spot where they all either fly together or they freeze together. And when they're flying together, it is a crazy, beautiful thing to watch as a Celtics fan. I'm thinking of game 2 against the Sixers, where even Tatum was cold. That's okay. We're going to win by 30. Game 7, right? When they're flying, no one can touch us, not even the Nuggets. But too often, when the game is tight, should this go to Tatum? But Tatum is like, do I deserve to be that guy that it should be going to? There's a lot of thinking going on. There's a lot of overthinking going on, and it's getting in the way of efficient basketball. Whereas with the Heat, somebody's not having a good game. That's okay. Jimmy Butler still loves you. Jimmy Butler just wants to win the game. That's what his only goal is. And if your only goal is to win that game and you're Max Strus and you're not hitting threes, says, okay, that's all right. Sit on the bench, let Duncan cook. He's hot right now. That's fine. But it's not one player faltering, the other guys falter. Because when Jimmy Butler isn't having a great game, mentally he's still there. Physically, emotionally, he is still present at that game. And it gives his other teammates that inspiration that they can keep going, they can keep winning. That's what's so impressive to me. And that's what the mental toughness kind of comes in. There's all sorts of different mental toughness. And I'm sure we were talking about this before we started podding. We're going to talk about whole different topics over the summer. Historical stuff, off-season stuff, fan stuff, etc. But one of the things with mental toughness is there are different levels to it, and there's different ways of doing it. And the way that the Nuggets are mentally tough is not the same way that the Heat are mentally tough. And I'm curious to dive into that maybe later on or as that series goes on. But the difference here is interesting to see. It feels like a bunch of guys who are very talented, who either don't know if they deserve to be able to be good enough to win, combined with a rookie head coach who's, deer in headlights for a series, or if it is a struggle of hierarchy and why can't we do this? And we should be able to do this, but we can't do this. Are we getting in our own way? Combined with, on the other side, a Heat team that is saying, we didn't have a good regular season record-wise, and that's okay. We're still going to do what we have to do. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do our game plan. And like you had said, they play a completely different style from any other team in the NBA, and it works so well for them. By far. They zig where other people zag. And they have a player in Jimmy Butler that I've never seen before in my life. And that's why this series is 3-0.
He got that all off his chest, ladies and gentlemen. Anthony's therapy session.
Did I seem objective enough in that? Did I seem?
No, I thought it was great. I thought that was sensational. I thought that was actually like amazing analysis. But you're passionate, brother. No, I'm just gonna hop in. I agree with pretty much all of that. I think I just want to push back on the coach thing. Like, I also think some of these things have been present for years. Like, Ime didn't hide the fact that, like, last year, I know y'all went to 7 and like you had clutched up in each of these series, but along the way, there were some hiccups and some deer in the headlights moments. And like Tatum, I think, like, we were saying Tatum's game 7, like we said this in like group chat, like Tatum's game 7 was like the best one all time. Like I personally disagree. It was great. I personally disagree. I just think it was a score. It's a different type of game 7 than like Steph's game 7, for example. Steph controlled the whole heartbeat of that game. Every possession, every pace, he's orchestrating. He knows when he's going to shoot, when everyone else is going to shoot. Okay, Clay just made his last one. Let me see if he's going to make this one. Like, it's much more of like an organizational 50-point game 7 than Tatum's like a scoring. Like, you can't keep up with me. And I'm not saying either one is worse or better, but like Tatum, I don't think is at that point where can orchestrate the whole flow of a game yet. And because of that, you kind of need someone who does. And right now, your point guard's like Marcus Smart. right? And like no flame to Marcus Smart. I just don't know if that combo is the best. And we were talking offline about this. I don't know if that's the best for Tatum's development. Also, that could be overcome. I mean, last year you guys had Marcus Smart, you made a finals, right? Like that's totally it's possible to be overcome, but I think it definitely limits your margin for error in those close games, right? And that's something that in the future I would love to see. This is all speaking of hypotheticals, is like a more organizational point guard come in. That we thought that was going to be Brogdon a little bit more, but Brogdon's just not enough of a threat. But like, how do you get a good organizational point guard without getting rid of Jalen or something, right? So maybe we'll never see it, and maybe you don't need to see it because you can overcome that without it. But right, but like, that's something that I think really hurts right now. And then defensively, right? Like as much as you guys do have you guys have a lot of perimeter defenders, you guys don't have like a premier. Yeah.
And we don't have a cohesive defense either. We don't have a communication at the moment, which is not to sorry.
That's some coaching stuff. Yeah.
Right. And that's coaching stuff. And that is coaching stuff. And at the same time, it's what you're saying in terms of, at least with Ime, I agree with you. During last year's playoff run, there were those bumps in the road that happened against the Bucks, that happened against the Heat. And we got lucky, we got through it, and then we faced a team that, again, on paper didn't look as talented in your Warriors as the Boston Celtics did on paper, right? The better team wins the series. Absolutely. That's what happens in the NBA. There's no going back and saying, oh no, but this team was better. Maybe if it's a game 7 and one team has been a little bit better and there's some phantom foul call, there's a couple times, there's a couple exceptions, but for the most part, the better team wins the series because they play better basketball. And for the Celtics, like you're saying, they do have good individual defenders. They don't have necessarily a premier all-world defender, but they also have enough good defenders to overcome it. To me, on paper, at least, they have better defenders than the Heat do. So, but the Heat are playing far better defense, and they're playing as a unit.
I will argue, though. I would argue the best big man defender on the Heat is better than the best big man defender on like the Celtics and the best perimeter defender on the Heat. But you're right. Like as a whole unit, like the Heat should have no business getting away with like Duncan Robinson and Max Strus minutes, and both of them are averaging double digits in the series. Both of them, like not just one, right? And these are two guys, Duncan Robinson specifically, who was benched for like half the season, and like like out of the rotation. And don't get me wrong, he was pretty good last series. I kind of started playing a little bit more. That was when like that started happening. But like, I have to agree a good amount about the coaching thing. I think the coaching thing is not helping, but I also think there are some inherent flaws with this team. And the whole Jalen stuff was weird. The vibes were off. That was bizarre. You go down 3-2 against the 76ers. You lose the game 4 and game 5 against the Hawks. Like the vibes have been weird on the Celtics all year. I just didn't think it was gonna come to this. This is like catastrophic. As catastrophic as the Eastern Conference appearance can be, this is a lot worse than the Lakers loss. Like this is miles worse. Just even being in this situation, even if they win the next game and win the next game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was thinking the same thing. Even if we lose in 6, wasn't as competitive.
So yeah, that's our whole discussion on that. Feel free to hop in.
I got one more thing on the. So I've been talking to a lot of people about this. I'm curious what you think. Especially people that aren't, there's a Bulls fan buddy that lives up here, Sixers fan that lives up here, a few other people, and that aren't Celtics fans. Somebody had asked me, how are you feeling about this? And I had to give it up because there's a pro and a con. And the con is kind of what we discussed. That mental, whatever it is, the je ne sais quoi, the difference between a Steph 50 game and a Tatum 50 game. The Jaylen Brown, I saw some funny Venn diagram about Jaylen Brown. Is he open? Yes, no, stand in the corner. Yes, free, or drive into the paint and dribble into 3 defenders or slip on the ground. Like, and I think he's a great player. He showed that this year. He's worthy. He's all NBA. So on the plus side, or on the negative side, we've seen what happens with that mental aspect of it, at least on an individual level with a Ben Simmons. And when this is just life, right? Like even in a friend group, if there's like if one person and another person have their dynamic and for whatever reason it's kind of got stale, that happens. People drift apart. That's hard enough to kind of repair, and it takes intention and want to from both parties to make it work. If you get a whole group of people, a la maybe the Celtics, where they're like, we just can't figure this out. That's a con for me. The pro is that I don't think we need a free agent splash. I don't think we need another guy to tweak. I just think 25-year-old Jason Tatum is still growing up. I'm 25. You're 24, 23?
24.
24. We're yeah. 24, 25 years old. We all make mistakes. Like it's a part of it. And I just think so that's the pro. And that's why I don't feel as bad. I don't think we can obviously come back and win the series. I don't feel as bad because for me, all the pieces are there and they just need to be placed in the right order. And then I think we at least have one chip in us with the talent that we have on this team for the next 5 years. And we don't have it. Last thing I want to say before I want to hear what you have to say is sometimes I play tennis, and I would much rather win a good game in which both me and my opponent are going at it. And I just am locked in the whole time, and so is he. Mm-hmm. But I just end up winning that day because I made the better plays at the right time. But it's not like he played badly. But with the Celtics and Sixers, it kind of felt like if I had gone out there and won a close game in which we both had a ton of unforced errors. And maybe the last point is he hits it into his own net. And I'm like, okay, sweet, I won. But I didn't really create that win, if that makes sense. So that was what I thought the difference was. And the Heat aren't going to hit it into the net. They're going to hit it cross court, and you're going to have to go sprint over there and get it, try to lob it back up, and they're going to stand at the net going, thanks, and then slam it down. That's the point. That's the difference.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that is, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like insane. Moving on, yes. We need to talk about what each of these teams need to do to win the series. So the Celtics, no, we won't even do that.
We did it. We're moving on.
So the Nuggets and the Heat. We're just gonna go into the NBA Finals. I really want to discuss a little bit of this because I think this is fascinating. Just early doors. I mean, for context, the NBA Finals is going to start June 1st, no matter what. So we're gonna have some time. Because it's the 23rd right now, right? So really quickly, I think just historically, I just want to talk about this on a bigger, wider scale. The Heat, this would be their first chip since the Heatles, the LeBron chip, and basically the first not asterisk chip. In my opinion, it shouldn't have an asterisk, but general public likes to do it. The first non-super team chip in a long time, I would argue. And it's a Spoelstra coming out party. I mean, a Spoelstra was always good, and he had always led. Like he got Tyler Johnson a $60 million contract like 4 years ago, and he's out the NBA like 2 years later, right? Like Spoelstra's always been a good coach, right? But this has been a masterclass in coaching, especially in terms of how they played in the regular season, basically prepping them perfectly for the playoffs and what they do there. And I think a Jimmy Butler chip people would start losing jobs, like specifically in Philadelphia and Chicago and Minnesota, 3 teams that gave up on him. I was watching this video. Sorry. I was watching this video. Jimmy Butler gets traded on draft night, the night that Chris Dunn gets picked, and Zach LaVine was on the T-Wolves already. So the Bulls recorded it and released a video themselves, like celebrating the trade of Jimmy Butler for Chris Dunn and Zach LaVine, as if it was like a hype video for like Zach LaVine and Chris Dunn. Like insane. But for context, which is even worse, in that trade, the Bulls also gave up the 16th overall pick. So the Bulls traded Jimmy in the 16th for Zach LaVine in the 5th.
Who did the 16th become?
Someone as good as Chris Dunn, probably. If not, better. No,
Yeah.
I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, basically, no,
Hey,
the T-Wolves get the Bulls get no net picks. They did not net like one more first round pick from this trade. They went up 10 slots and added Zach LaVine to give up Jimmy Butler. Minnesota, and a team friendly contract at the time. Minnesota, they don't want to re-sign him. He tells everyone they need him. He gets traded away to Philly for a package that no one can remember pretty much still, which is
that's a
hilarious.
good point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane. It comes right after the Tobias Harris trade, though. About a month or two after the Tobias Harris trade. The Tobias Harris trade, though, which actually did involve first round picks, a lot more going the other way, which at the time was kind of crazy. But come the off season, after Jimmy Butler was the best player in the last series that Philly played, since Philly gave up all these assets to the Clippers, they feel more attached to Tobias Harris. Ownership goes, we can't give two more max contracts on top of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. So like, okay, here's Tobias. We're gonna give Tobias the max. They offered Jimmy Butler about 10 or 20 million under by year than what he could have got. So Jimmy said, all right, I'm gone. Goes to Miami and a sign and trade for Josh Richardson. Sign and trade for Josh Richardson. And that's
Wow.
how we got to Miami. Jimmy Butler has been disrespected and has been an all-star on 4 different NBA teams. Is disrespected at every single point, and now he'll have a chance to win a chip and be a top 50 overall player ever. And this will be like a narrative. It might even be a narrative top 50, but this is an incredible story, and I want the Heat to win. Just off that whole lineage that I just gave you, I want the Heat to win so badly.
Damn, that is crazy. Thank you for that.
He was traded for Chris Dunn and Zach LaVine, and then he was traded for
Who knows?
because this is all by memory, by the way. I didn't write any of this down, so I literally don't remember who he was traded for there. And then Josh Richardson, because you didn't want to give Jimmy $10 more million a year.
I will always remember the Tobias Harris over me clip. And
he was right.
He was right. He was right. Man, it's going to be a lot of interesting and uncomfortable conversations coming up if Jimmy Butler wins this Finals MVP, because it's weird. He's 33 years old and he's playing unbelievable basketball, and he's been playing unbelievable basketball. And you're right, he gets consistently disrespected. And I was telling you this stat. I saw this somewhere on Twitter that since Jimmy Butler joined the Heat, he has the same number of at least 35 points in a game as Terry Rozier in the last 4 years. And he is also leading the league in 35 point games in the playoffs at the same time. So he really is the definition of, he just flips. And it is one of the most unique NBA players, and like you said, storylines and play style. Like, we haven't even talked about his play style.
And we were texting about this earlier. I mean, Jimmy Butler, people compare him to MJ, but Jimmy Butler is playing like a power forward. He's going in the post on Grant Williams and he can't guard him, you know? Jimmy Butler in this series has attempted 6 3-pointers. What is that? Like,
and I remember one of them was a splash. Oh, sorry, go on.
Ridiculous. He's made only 2 of them, and he's averaging 27 a game.
Yeah.
It's absolutely absurd, and it's not like he's getting to the free throw line more than like 8 times a game or something. That's kind of to the point where you're just like a free throw god. I think he has like 20 free throw attempts in 3 games. It's like 7 free throws a game. It's like what you would expect a superstar in a slow series to get. It's pretty incredible. I think the games that we were talking about this too. I always kind of think about this. This is kind of ripped from Bill Simmons. Bill Simmons talks about this a lot, but like one players, like historically, which ones they are, and I think currently, you can argue LeBron's a one of one on longevity. I think Draymond's a one of one in terms of what he does. We never have seen a player, probably will never see a player like that. You don't necessarily have to be a god tier player to be a one of one. But Jimmy Butler might be a one of one. Like, he might be literally like, I've never seen this. He didn't make an All-Star team this year. I think he averaged 18 a game in the regular season.
No. He averaged more. I've looked
Yeah.
23.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I was faded then. I must have been looking at a split then. But I think like there was a split there for a few months where he was averaging super low.
Mhm.
Um.
Well, yeah, he'll score 15 and nobody bats an eye.
Yeah.
Nobody's like,
He'll
oh,
score
well,
less than that. He'll score less than that. No one bats an eye. So,
right.
yeah. I'm excited. I would love a Jimmy Butler chip. Do you have anything to
But
add on that?
yeah, on
Yeah.
that, on Jimmy Butler, I saw on Twitter today. It was a screenshot of when Jimmy Butler was 2-5 this season, and somebody was making fun of him for saying, "Yeah, we're gonna go win the fucking championship,"
Mm-hmm.
and everybody was like, "Okay, dude."
And
And
end of the playoffs, they had the press conference. He said, "I'm tired of losing."
yep.
All right, man. You're going to the playing game and you're going to lose to the Hawks.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm tired of losing. You don't decide whether you win or lose. And he is
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I do."
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, I do."
So,
Yeah, I can't believe it. I hope even if he loses this finals, I hope he's a Hall of Famer. At this point, bro, he's been more
oh,
relevant in the
I think
NBA. I think he's been more relevant in the NBA than T Mac. So
I think he's
I
a
don't know.
Hall
It's
of
like
Famer. He is a Hall of Famer. He's
he would
100% a
have
Hall
to
of Famer.
finish. He probably still has to finish out his career, but
Yeah. Well, you know what? No, I'll say this. I'll challenge any of our viewers or listeners. If you think that Jimmy Butler is not or will not, I think Max and I have slightly dissenting opinions there. I think I
mhm.
would put him in already. But I'm with you. At least a couple more years will help. If you don't think so, come into this podcast and have a nice debate with us, and we can talk about that.
How
I think
fun.
I think we stand both pretty firm in what Jimmy Butler is and who he is.
Yeah, and I think Jimmy Butler has done this consistently in different environments, which I personally give a lot of respect to that. That's one of the reasons I highly rated Kawhi historically. It was like, oh yeah, this guy is like a top 4 player in the NBA on like 3 different teams. Like, I respect that. But yeah, so moving on. So that's a lot of clout. Kyle Lowry winning a second chip would be interesting for
And
a
Kevin Love.
potential. Kevin Love too. Lowry could finesse his way into the Hall of Fame if he piggybacks onto another chip as well.
And hits
Um,
like big timely shots like he's been doing too. Like not just like
yeah,
sitting on the bench.
yeah. I'd be very. I would still be surprised if he made it. To be honest, it would have
Yeah.
to be like a narrative based one. But he kind of has like a good amount of All Stars and stuff like that. So that
Kyle
always
Lowry,
helps.
if we're talking about Kyle Lowry, like maybe has a chance with a second, Jimmy Butler is a surefire.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying like Kyle Lowry would need a second and then probably need another one. Like I think if he was a key contributor on a ring this year, he would also need another one at some point, even if it was like a getting back
Yeah,
put in the backpack ring.
you're right. You're
Um,
right. I see that.
uh, Such a hypothetical take, though. It's
Yeah.
not relevant. So the Heat have Nikola Jovic riding the bench. The Denver Nuggets have Nikola Jokic leading the line. Currently, I think one of them has been better than the other. And it's probably the 2-time MVP. Overall, I think Nikola Jokic also, he's like a top 75 player currently. If you're a 2-time MVP, that has to be the case, but he also has other seasons in MVP consideration, which has to be taken into account. But a ring would catapult him into like different stratospheres in terms of like he probably passes guys like Chris Paul and James Harden, in my opinion, already.
Yeah.
And I think there's also an element to like the playoff rising, which you always have to give credit for. In no playoff series has he been like worse than in the regular season. Even against the Warriors last year, he's dropping like 30, like 8-8 and stuff like that. Like, so yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like Jimmy Butler, there might be some, is he top 50 guys if he wins a chip?
Yeah.
Uh, but if maybe even better, fine. Like I could put him a little higher than that. But Jokic winning a chip, that'll vault him. That will vault him into very, very high Pantheon Hall of Fame rarefied air because he's already in terms of talent, one of the most incredible offensive players I've ever seen my entire lifetime. And he does it in a city where no one pays attention.
I agree. And 2 MVPs, if he wins a chip and his finals MVP, like if you compare just those accolades to like Charles Barkley, for example,
Mhm.
Charles Barkley, I have like top 25 all time, I think.
Yep.
If I remember my list correctly, it's like, oh, is Nikola Jokic maybe a
Yeah.
top 25 all time player? You know, like you start thinking that. Another thing, I
Right.
actually want to, I did want to swing this by you. Nikola Jokic versus Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Ooh.
How much does Jokic really need to do now to pass Giannis's body of work? And I know Giannis is a little bit different. He's been around a little bit longer,
Yep.
slightly.
Yep.
Won most improved, which was not really like. I think Jokic might have won it too. I might be tweaking, but
Yeah.
Giannis is a little bit different of a player, a little bit more defensive. Giannis also has been listed at every position except for shooting guard on Basketball Reference, if I remember correctly, which is hilarious that he was ever listed as a point guard. But I don't think they're that far. I don't think they're that far at all. And Giannis's recent playoff failures amplify a lot of that. And should Jokic win another MVP or another chip, it's going to be really difficult to put Giannis ahead of him all time. Should Giannis not do that, is kind of my take.
Mhm.
And I know Giannis is more defensive player of the year potential, and he's already won that award. But at some point, would you rather two finals MVPs, two chips, two MVPs, or just one of those with two MVPs, right?
It's a great question. I'd been thinking about this recently too because
Mm-hmm.
Giannis wins two MVPs
Yep.
and is kind of criticized for his playoff failures. Then he doesn't win the MVP the
Mm-hmm.
next year when he had a solid case, and then he wins the Finals MVP, and all of a sudden he is consensus, yeah,
Which is the first year that Jokic wins MVP.
MVP, and then he takes that
Yeah.
mantle and he starts doing it. So Embiid next? No, probably not in my mind because he's a little old. But I just looked it up. They are Jokic and Giannis are 2 months apart in age.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. I mean, Jokic maybe has a game that might be able to translate a little bit better. Giannis has
That's
been that's
that's
could be part of it.
that's where I'm kind of gonna go with this. Is my take, kind of finalized take with this is like I think the Nuggets and Jokic have a way better chance of, even if they should they not win this chip, like in the next 5 years, who's got a better chance of winning a chip? I think pretty easily is the Nuggets. This team is very young, and like Jokic, should he age, what he's gonna get less athletic? Like I
Right.
don't. But Giannis, potential injuries. He's playing with Drew Holiday, Middleton, and Lopez. I don't know who's even on that team next year, let alone in three. Um, East is also really good, and the West is in a transition period. I think that's as much as the West is deep and good. It's not, you don't have the prime Warriors around anymore. And as much as the Warriors could do something next year, the Lakers could do something next year, the Mavs even.
Of
Um,
course. Wait, but so the East is good and the West is
I think
what?
the top end of the East is better than the West, which would help the Nuggets' chance of consistently making a finals.
Mhm.
In my opinion, like it helps to not have Giannis in your conference.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
like it's nice, like, and not
That's
have
true.
Embiid and not have Tatum in your conference. Like as
Right.
much as like those teams are flawed, like we're seeing it now. Like Jimmy Butler is the one who's actually going to make it out of that conference. Like it's nice to
Right.
not have to play those guys. Um,
Right.
uh, so that's kind of my developing take. I don't strongly stand for or against it, but if I'm Giannis, I thought I was about to be this era's guy, and now there's another guy coming for the mantle, and Luka's
Yeah.
waiting, and Wembanyama's coming up. Clock's ticking. You got to win your chips
Yeah.
now. I know Giannis is kind of young, but the clock is ticking. You got to win now. I don't know.
Yeah. And you made a lot of great points. I think that the Nuggets just have such a younger team too. And they have their playoff experience and they have their championship guy. So like their veteran leadership can be Jeff Green, guys of that nature. And that's
Who's good? Who's good?
who's good, who's good, who helps, who helps. But
Yeah.
it's not but if you have Jeff Green as a way to make sure that your team is going to win and you need Jeff Green to be great. If Jeff Green scores you 12 points, you're like, oh, thanks, Jeff Green. That's awesome.
Mhm.
If you need Middleton to give you 20, you need, like you were saying, you need Drew Holiday. So they are in different directions. I always struggle to speculate And that's not that. I hope that's not copping out of your take. I think it's a good
That's
like thought, like
yeah.
experiment kind of direction of where things could go. And I like what you're talking about in terms of the West is in a bit of flux and the East is consistent. And who knows, maybe the Heat are. We're not thinking of the Heat as a one-off team. Maybe they just Jimmy Butler is another guy that knows how to play into 34, 35, 36, and he plays with a bunch of guys that are they're all in their early 20s and they could all just get better with him and they could just become a great team. That's so it's we can't rule them out anymore either.
Yeah, it's not like Jimmy Butler's dunking on people right now. Like,
No, yeah,
and we're seeing all of these guys playing better and better till they're older and older. Like Steph just probably we just saw this best version of Steph and he's 35. Like, and I know like LeBron's 38 and he was slow, like he looked slow at the end of last game. Like, but it's like, dude, Jimmy Butler's 33. Like, he's got at least 2 good years of being competitive. Man, make it to a finals
yep.
again. But but yeah, and obviously I like the speculation or like the kind of like looking ahead, like what could happen. That's kind of I like doing that stuff. So but yeah, I don't really have like we'll see, we'll see, we'll see.
It's tough, right? Because this is a what would it mean for Jokic in the first place if he wins this? That's what we're basing
Yeah,
this argument on. If he
exactly.
flops, if he doesn't win the finals, even if he has a great series, but if he doesn't win the finals, then it's a different conversation because he hasn't won a chip yet, and our focus will shift to Jimmy.
Another question now about this finals. If the Nuggets win it, is Jokic the best player? If the Heat win it, is Jimmy the best player? And are we wrong to think about it that way?
Okay, that's a good question. Oh, I like how you're serving up these questions. These are good.
I'm cooking a little bit.
You're cooking. I'll let you cook. I'll say yeah. I'll say yeah for sure for Jokic. Right. That's when you are in the MVP conversation consistently, then you win the Finals MVP. That's what happened to Giannis, so that's what's going to happen to Jokic. Giannis can reclaim that. That's something that you have to be as good as I think people might have been a little quick to put Giannis in the rarefied air like LeBron because LeBron was even if he wasn't winning the chip for a decade, he was the best player in the league. And I think maybe it's a bit hindsighty, but it was pretty consensus, I think, for the most part. Versus where Giannis, yeah, he was. I think a lot of people, probably the majority, said he was the best player in the league. But you had your Kevin Durant guys, you had your even at the time Nikola Jokic guys, you had your LeBron guys, your Kawhi guys. So he
Steph Curry
wasn't
guys.
the right. Sorry, I'm so sorry, Steph.
Come on,
who you can make the argument for. You can make the argument that Steph Curry is the best player in the NBA. I think right now, and so we're in a zone of flux. So. Absolutely. I think Jokic, if he wins, I'll say it on this podcast. He's the best player in the NBA. He might be already, even without having won the chip. But if Jimmy Butler doesn't win it in the finals, I don't think people vault him to number 2 or something like that. And I think even if he wins, you're going to have your guys that are saying, yeah, he's the best player in the NBA, but he's a guy that now people say is the best player in the NBA versus the default guy, which is where I think Jokic wins. He becomes the default best player in the NBA. So Jimmy Butler, you can make the argument. I probably won't agree with you, but that's just kind of like that's where I land on that.
Yeah, it's like even if Jimmy Butler wins a chip, if someone like comes to me and is like, "Do you want Steph Curry or Jimmy Butler on your team next year?" I'm gonna say Steph Curry. Right. And I'm also biased, right? Like I'm sorry. I get it. But I'm probably just gonna say Steph Curry anyways. Jokic, on the other hand, it's going to be difficult to argue against him. But I think the way we should look at the like best player overall is like usually you have like eras, right? And you kind of had from like 2000 to 2010, it was just consistently is either Duncan or Kobe. And so that was like a little weird because it was one of the two. In the 90s, best player was, MJ. Yeah. And then before that, you had Magic, you had Larry. Okay. But in between of all those years, you kind of have years of flux. So from like 98 to like 2002, it was probably the Tim Duncan or Shaq. And then some people would have argued AI because people didn't understand. Exactly. It wasn't like in retrospect, it definitely wasn't AI Kevin Garnett. It was definitely like one of Shaq or Timmy D during that 4-year run. But you kind of have those flux years. And then we get to LeBron, but right before LeBron, you get D Wade's like still a top 4 player probably in the league at that time. Kobe's still incredible, and KD's on the up and up, and guess who wins the chip? It's Dirk. Like, you know, it's like of all those guys,
Yeah,
like
right.
yeah, like and then but then LeBron is anointed the best player in the league for the next basically 10 years. And so and then you kind of you have Steph and KD, and they kind of like flip flop, I think, with LeBron for a little bit towards the back end in like 2018, 2019 times. But right after LeBron wins his chip with the Lakers, it's pretty hard to like we had Giannis and he was like the best player in the league for like 2 years. And then now it might be Jokic. I think we're kind of in this transition phase where it's about 5 or 6 guys who could win the chip. And that's what can enable guys like Jimmy to make a finals, if that makes any sense.
Mm.
I think it's a lot harder for someone like Jimmy Butler to make a finals and potentially win one when like you got like LeBron at peak shape running through the East every year, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Not to discredit Jimmy at all.
not at all. It's
Yeah,
it's two totally different styles of winning. Where LeBron makes his teammates better because they are in the right place, right time, ready for the pass, catch and shoot, feeling confident that they have the best player on their team. They're going to go out and win. Jimmy Butler, this iteration and last year's iteration, where both teams consistently rose to the occasion, and in the bubble, it felt like he wasn't. Yes. He obviously they're playing in such a style where Jimmy can kind of suck the defense in. He can kick. That's a bit LeBron, of course. I think there's a bit more of a spirited where the players with him are playing better because they are becoming better players innately. I think like they are making great cuts and great reads, even when Jimmy Butler's sitting on the bench. Where
I
with
agree.
LeBron, he makes his teammates better insofar as that when he's on the court, they're better players because he's there and he sucks in the defense, and maybe they get a little bit more confident stuff. But it's different with Jimmy Butler, and it's just two different ways to win. And LeBron is, I think, I have him as second greatest player of all time. I think you do too.
Yeah,
So obviously, there's no shame in that. It's a different way that Jimmy Butler is doing it right now, and it's helpful. But like you're saying, the East is so deep and competitive. Giannis could be back next year with some different trades, and this league moves so fast that and maybe Tatum and Brown go to see a good sports psychologist, and they can figure out what's going on with them, and they can rise to the occasion. And then Jimmy Butler's style won't work that year, and maybe it will again the next.
exactly.
Yeah,
And that's what's like beautiful about the parity right now. Like, I mean, we got 22 teams trying to make playoffs every year. I know 20 of them make it, but at least like there's only like 8 teams this year that really stop trying, right? Like that's fantastic. Last little thing, I just totally agree with all that. But I like Luke is gonna drop like a triple double for a whole playoff series in like one of these upcoming years, and we're gonna do the whole appointing him as the king. And he's gonna flop like the next year or something. Like that's kind of where I see this happening, like for the next little bit. And what's super exciting about this is that someone that we could eventually see taking the crown and winning multiple chips is Victor Wembanyama. So this week we had the NBA draft lottery, and basically the lottery to pick Wembanyama. If anyone follows the NBA on any socials, they've been pumping it down our throats. But this is a generational talent, and in my opinion, the best prospect since LeBron James. And when you put it in that way, that's why everyone gets so excited, is because you really have a guy who might be able to take the mantle of the NBA. Spurs, they win the lottery. The guy representing them at the lottery, I don't know if you saw, started celebrating like crazy. And Victor Wembanyama, Spurs fan growing up, obviously Tony Parker French as well. It feels like a great story. And as an NBA fan and as a Wembanyama fan, this feels like the best place he can go to potentially reach his like ceiling of ceilings, you know?
Yeah, it's so cool. There's so many parallels to having yet another number one overall pick, having the international aspect of it. The older guys want to come in and help mentor him growing up. They have some good young pieces around them already too, so he'll be able to learn how to play with these good young pieces, and it doesn't really matter. This is a great place for him to develop, and they'll find guys that can kind of come in and grow just like him. And who better to have teach you how to play Spurs basketball than Timmy, Manu, and Tony Parker. And Wembanyama, at least on paper, looks significantly more talented than any of those guys were. Tim Duncan,
which is
easily top 10 player.
Including Tim Duncan, who was the first overall pick.
Right, exactly. And Tim Duncan is amazing. And of course, and we'll get into all that. He's on both of our top 10 all time lists, like no debate, no question. But
by far.
Easily. But Victor Wembanyama getting the knowledge and the skill set and the defensive presence and the angles and the mindset that Tim Duncan has, that's a scary thing for the rest of the league.
I agree. And that's like the thing is like Wembanyama, it's going to like define his career is how good he can be on defense. Because if you don't have to play with another center next to him, the spacing you're going to be able to create for a guy like that is going to be insane. He's looks pretty switchable at this point. His lateral quickness doesn't look completely chalked for a guy who's 7'4". We'll see. Like this is I'm mostly going off of a lot of his like G League stuff, and I have watched a lot of his French League stuff, but it's not the Euro League. It's still the French League. There are teams in the French League that compete in the Euro League, but I don't want to give him too much credit for the French League. It's not like Luka, where Luka was the MVP of the Euro League. Like as much as Wembanyama is an amazing player, like I think that's important to note. I totally agree. Listen to Tim Duncan, listen to Tony Parker. Don't listen to Tony Parker about being a good teammate, because I'm pretty sure he smashed one of his teammates' wives.
Yeah, at least not off the court.
Yeah. Listen to him on the court. But maybe don't take the ball up as much. You're still a center. But don't listen to Manu about the whole shoot with the left hand thing. Like stick to your right hand.
Don't listen to Tim Duncan's fashion sense, please.
Oh yeah. Actually, maybe he should, honestly. Like just be the most boring superstar ever. Just focus on the grind. But the last thing is like it's great. New Balance on some Kawhi stuff. This is gonna keep Greg Popovich around probably for the next 10 years, which is hilarious. Dude, he is a relic. He is he should be protected by the US government as a national monument.
He needs a good I feel like I'm curious if he's searching for a new protege, because he's 74. So he's not going to make it through this dynasty, I don't think. Or this. My theory. This is
my okay. We didn't talk about the Warriors for 45 minutes, so I have to talk about them now. Here's my theory. Steph Curry plays for another few years. He's hooping. He's doing whatever. Probably plays another 5-6 years, right? Okay, 5-6 years, not too bad. Steve Kerr, Team USA, and the Warriors for another 5-6 years. Who was the last Team USA coach? Greg Popovich. I'm pretty sure Greg Popovich still does stuff with them, but yeah. Steve Kerr worked with Greg Popovich. He was a player under Greg Popovich on the Spurs. They're still homies. Okay. 4 or 5 years. Greg Popovich is getting a little old. He's like, all right, I'm going to retire. Steph Curry retires too, because they're kind of talking. Steve's like, yo, I hear Steph's going to retire. G-Pop, you gotta step down, dog. And then they do it. Steve Kerr takes a year sabbatical or some shit. Greg Popovich gets his finale world tour, and they hire Steve Kerr. And then Steve Kerr finally gets to coach an athletic big man that he always wanted, because he wanted to fucking play James Wiseman. Anyways, that's my Steve Kerr likes James Wiseman, so he's gonna go coach Wembanyama in 6 years.
So Popovich is 74. Let's say he remains around for 5-6 more years.
Steph Curry's 35. 5 years of Steph.
5 years of Steph. It'll be interesting. I've heard this story before. The Spurs, maybe there's some injury concerns with Wembanyama. Maybe Wemby. Maybe I'll make it easy. Maybe he's dealing with some, not ankle issues, but that could be an example. People are wondering, could he be that guy? Could he be that star? Eventually, with some good home cooking drafting, they get a couple other players, and they take a team to the second round of the playoffs and lose in 6 games. Mm-hmm. Maybe these Spurs could be playing the Warriors in 6 games. Wouldn't that be an interesting mirror? And then they're looking like, okay, I see what's going on. We're on the cusp. We're on the verge. We got a great coach right now who loves his team, and this team loves his coach. And then the next year they play maybe a team that was considered to be a title contender at least, and they lose in a hard-fought 7-game series. And then their coach leaves, and Steve Kerr comes into the franchise, and they.
Oh yes, this is a great example. Yes,
I feel like I've seen that story somewhere before, but I can't tell exactly where. And wouldn't it be interesting if the Warriors and the Spurs played in a 6-game series in which the Warriors, an aging team, managed to beat a team that was yet to come?
I don't know if I could. I don't know who I'd root for. If Wembanyama like 2 years from now is in the second round of the playoffs against the Warriors, dude, because then Wembanyama's on like that's like all time track, like.
We might have
Anyways,
a new resident San Antonio Spurs fan on
heck
our
yeah.
podcast.
The issue is I don't know if Steve Kerr's ever gonna want to leave the Warriors, given that like he's gonna really have like such a great core to build around, including like Ty Jerome and Moses Moody. So I'm really curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, fantastic. Sure. Jonathan Kuminga is knocking.
The 2 second round picks Jonathan Kuminga is traded for this offseason, bro. This is gonna hurt. With that, we covered all the current events. It's been a long podcast. Draft lottery, I guess. Wait, I did want to mention one thing. There was a video of the Rockets getting the 4th overall pick and Wembanyama going, yes. Hilarious. And I love all the Rockets guys, like Tari Eason, like tweeted, like he's like writing this down, like taking notes, like, dude, Tari Eason, like you might be out of the NBA in like 4 years. Like I know he's really good. He's second team all NBA, but like, yeah, no, take notes on Wemby, but like it better be notes about his like offensive skill set, not about how he felt about your team, because like that dude is going to give you buckets for the next 20 like years. And then Blazers 3rd overall. I think this is a good chance for them to trade Dame, so they're probably going to trade the 3rd overall pick. My concern is like the 3rd overall pick. I don't think you can get a better player better than Dame, which I think is probably what's required to win a chip with Dame. I don't think Dame can be the best guy in a championship team. I'm willing to be wrong. Like, and I'm sure they disagree with me clearly.
Yeah.
But I don't think Dame can be the championship guy. And can you trade a 3rd overall pick for a guy who's better than Dame? Probably not. So maybe you go the other way. It's gonna be weird. This Portland thing is gonna be weird, and I think this is a perfect chance to reset. There's a clear top 4 of very good players in this draft. They have a chance to get one of them, and I don't think they're gonna do it. But they might get a haul. They might get an absolute haul for this pick. So we'll also see on that end.
Yeah, this is an interesting direction for them to take. I'm with you. I don't see how keeping that 3rd pick is going to help vault them into this new category. I just don't see it. I have a lot of respect for Damian Lillard as a basketball player. I think he's great. But I mean, we were just talking about Jimmy Butler's excellence in bringing guys up. There's also a way with, we're loving Jimmy Butler tonight.
We are loving.
We are. And I hate him, but I love him. There's a way that not only is he such a good inspirer of his teammates, but the way that they play just works so well. They have so many good shooters. They have so many versatile, switchable players, and they can play defense. And the Blazers don't necessarily have that style. So I wouldn't be as hot on Jimmy Butler pulling up to the Blazers and being like, all right, guys, we're going to take this team to the conference finals. That probably wouldn't happen because they're just not as good. So yeah.
I will say though, I mean, if you do look at this team, there are a lot of pieces. Shaden Sharp, he's very young. This is a piece. Like Anthony Simons, like 23. Like he just got a big contract. Jeremy Grant, who I think is RFA or unrestricted this year, something like that. And they have routes to caps. They have routes to cap space because they could get rid of Nurkic, I feel like, pretty easily if they wanted to. You trade Dame. So I think there are interesting pieces, but it's not an interesting piece if like, just like you're saying, Dame also isn't Jimmy Butler where he's gonna go elevate all the other guys. So we don't even get to know if that would work there. Right. But is Dame even, if you swap Dame and Jimmy, that team's not making the playoffs. Like Miami. Like if Dame was on Miami right now, I think you could strongly argue that team's not making the playoffs.
Well, it's tough. I think that's fair.
Super hypothetical.
Yeah,
super
very hypothetical.
But like,
I think, I think unless you're like just so unbelievably good that there's no doubt that the team that you're on is by default going to make the playoffs. Because Jimmy Butler, I think, could be on a team that's bad enough to not make the playoffs. I think he has before. So
No,
That might have been when he was pretty young, but I think it can happen.
the
So
Minnesota years.
right, exactly. So there are
Mhm.
years where he can't get it done, and so it's that's tricky. But I don't know. This is tough to compare, and that's why I think situations matter so much to players too. Like you do a Pat Riley and you have Eric Spoelstra, just such a strong culture with Miami as well that there's a lot of factors that go into it. So it
And
would
he's
be
been
reductive.
there a while, of course,
Yeah,
and he's been there a while, so
right.
you get to build a little bit. Yeah, yeah, that was
So,
you're
but
fair, but
anyways, but on the Blazers,
that's like my thought, you know.
yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair. And but on the Blazers, it's going to be tricky. I think it makes more sense definitely in terms of rebuilding to trade Dame away, get that pick, get some other
Yeah.
young picks and talent, and just kind of reset this thing. And it'll be tough because Damian Lillard is so key to that city, and he's top or second best player in their franchise history. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough talking about their situation right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know. I thought that was interesting though. I thought that was like one of the cooler
Yeah,
developments because they went from fifth to third, and like
yeah,
that's definitely like a trade one way. Like they're not just going to stand pat. They're either going to trade Dame or trade the third. But if they just pick, like the nightmare is they just pick like Brandon Miller third overall, and you just trot into the season with another rookie that you're hoping is a home run, and you're just like Dame. Like we're gonna see how it goes.
yeah.
I don't know. I they but that's gonna be interesting because I anticipate that pick will be moved. And I think there's a pretty clear top four with you got the Thompson twin. I forget which one is the better one. I think it's Amen Thompson. You got Brandon Miller, you got Scoot, and then you got Wemby. It's like a pretty clear top four in my opinion.
Yeah.
It could go some other ways, but like if you can get in that top four, if I'm OKC, for example, like I don't want to dwell on this too much, but if I'm OKC, I have the 12th overall pick, but I have a bunch of other picks that I can trade. I'm trying to get in this top four because one of these guys could be a home run. You don't know. Specifically, if Charlotte goes rogue and passes on Scoot, whoever has that third overall pick is going to be happy. So yeah, we'll see. So that's the lottery. We'll get more into that come draft time and whatnot. I think just the main point is Wembanyama is going to the Spurs, and if you're in the West, you should just be crying, just like me. But I was crying before Wembanyama got picked anyway. So with that, we're gonna move on to the last thing, and it's a little quiz for our boy Anthony.
Oh, let's go.
A little
All
quiz. So
right.
I think you've quizzed me. I don't think I've ever quizzed you yet, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I have a list and it's a little bit rogue. Okay. I think there's one or two players you'll very much struggle to get. I think the rest of the list, though, you should get pretty easily.
All right. I like it.
Um, uh, we're gonna give you. I'm just gonna give you as many guesses. This is more of like I want to see how many guesses it's gonna take.
Okay.
Okay. So whenever you're ready,
I'm ready.
it's the NBA slash ABA combo of career playoff leaders and all time for steals.
Whew, okay.
I thought this was interesting. I was just looking up some stats about like Jimmy Butler steals and whatnot, and that's what spawned this idea. So I started like looking back through all that.
Okay.
Some evident names on the list, but also some funny names on the list. So
All right. Word. And how many?
just going for the top 10. And then if you miss by picking 11 through 15, I'm not going to count that as a miss because
Okay.
for context, the number 10 in steals only has about 15 or 20 more than number 15.
Okay. All right. Let's do this. Let's try to knock out the easy guys.
Cool.
LeBron.
First,
Wow. Okay. Jordan.
third. Or do you want me to give you these numbers? Are you cool with that?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yep.
Kobe.
Sixth.
Okay. Tim Duncan. Oh my lord, I missed one. What's he at?
Nope.
That's crazy.
He comes in at a cool 46th overall.
Wow. Okay. Never mind. Scottie Pippen.
Scottie Pippen, he's second.
Okay. Nice. Draymond Green. Oh my Lord. Okay.
Ceremony is 22nd.
John Stockton.
Yes. John Stockton is fifth.
Okay. Oh, now I'm like overthinking this. Let's go with Magic Johnson.
Yes, actually, I would this one I was very surprised about. It's pretty known to not be a super plus defender.
Mm,
But I guess he's a guard playing in the 80s, and you're just gonna get steals that way.
right. So what was he at?
He was fourth. So right now you have 1 through 6.
Wow, okay. Let's see. Trying to think of like those other kind of players who would have been Gary Payton.
No, I just
Ah,
assume it's because he didn't play enough.
yeah. I thought maybe
Play
he
enough.
like had enough steals, but it's really not.
He's 28th, so he's
Oh,
a few behind Draymond.
okay. Okay. Other guys who get a lot of steals in the playoffs, deep in. Michael Cooper.
Oh, you're on the right track. He's wrong at 31, but
My
it's a
Lord.
pretty good guess.
James Worthy.
No.
Man, this is a tough. This is a tough stat. Man, Larry Bird.
Yes.
Whatever.
There we go. Yes. 8th.
Okay. Um.
I'll start giving you clues shortly because it's tough.
Okay. I'm trying to think of like guys that were in the NBA. Like, when did they start? So this is counting the ABA. This is when they started in the. So what year?
73. Good
America,
question. 1973.
1973. Okay. I mean Julius Irving.
He's 11th.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, yeah.
But that we're not gonna. Yeah, no, that's
Malone.
Carl.
Yeah.
Or
I said it
no.
first.
He was wrong.
Oh, brutal.
Here, let me give you a clue.
Okay, sure.
So you're missing the 7th, the 9th, the 10th. Two of these players played in the 90s at some point.
Okay.
And then one of them is on a relevant long-term winning team that you mentioned a good player from before.
Okay. Tony Parker is that guy? Maybe.
No.
No. Is it Manu?
Yeah.
Okay.
Manu 10th. So this is I'm gonna be honest, you kind of got all the good ones at this point. I think the last 3 of these ones are just very difficult, which is kind of why I picked this one. I wanted to see if you get
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Manu
Okay.
Manu is at 10th with 292. He's only has 5 more career playoff steals than Julius, who also had the
Oh,
ABA
wow.
ones, obviously. But yeah.
Right. Okay. So 90s players, or at least they played in the 90s, and they are not expected because of their stature, or not expected because of like I guess like not stature. Are they not expected because of like not known for defense, or are they not expected because they're not like all time or like great players? You know what I mean?
It's a combo of both.
Okay.
But yeah,
I'm trying to think.
it's just for considering these are the playoffs, it's 2 players who you wouldn't necessarily expect, like, given like playoffs and like
Okay.
how relevant and
Oh, okay.
the
Fair
playoffs
enough.
are, and
Man. Oh,
unexpected by stature and like, yeah, that's true.
okay. I don't know why. Man, did he get a lot of assists? Is Mark Jackson on that list?
No,
No.
he's not. No,
Oh,
he's not. But that I
okay.
like that. You're on the right track though. He's pretty far down. He didn't make the playoffs enough time to make it far enough.
Yeah.
Um, there's one guy you're gonna be so pissed that I think
They
you.
did get him. All right.
Yeah, I think
Kevin
there's one.
Johnson.
Right track as well. No, not Kevin Johnson.
Okay.
You're gonna rage.
Oh, of course I am.
Uh,
In the 90s, okay. But not necessarily because of
Like just a little bit more irrelevant than Kevin Johnson.
Just a little bit. Not like the Dan Marley type. Like that's too like.
Oh, that's
Oh,
pretty irrelevant.
okay. Or relevant.
That's
Not.
not him, but
Okay. Okay. So that kind of guy. Oh, okay. Sheesh, man. What the let's go with who's that guy? Then on the but like kind of to that like a Jeff Hornacek type.
you're on the right
Jeff
track.
Hornacek. Oh
No. You're on the right track though. The,
man,
think like a little bit earlier than that.
earlier. Okay,
Like this guy played in the 90s. Doesn't mean that was when he
it
was like
wasn't a star in the '90s. For some reason, Isaiah Thomas on my mind, but I know he's a great
too
player.
relevant.
So
Yeah, too relevant.
yeah, okay. And like I think Joe Dumars is too relevant to.
Yes.
Okay, Joe.
No.
Dumars.
No. But like he's too relevant. You're on the right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, man.
I believe both of these guys are also top 10 all time in regular season steals.
Okay. That's helpful. That's helpful. In that case, it's not good. It's not good. It's not. Man, I hate this quiz.
You're gonna rage, I think, for both of these. Oh,
Like Robert Parrish.
no, you're close though.
No.
Robert Parrish is on this list somewhere. Let me go find it. No, but yeah.
Man.
Short guy.
Short guy. Okay. Short guy.
Steals in the 90s. They're short.
Short guy.
Stockton got him.
That's why Stockton got him in the 90s. I mean, like not Jason.
They both played in the 90s.
Not Jason Kidd.
Yes, Jason Kidd.
Oh, okay.
So Jason Kidd is one of them.
Okay, where's he? 7 or 9?
Seventh.
Okay. I feel like I just didn't know that he played enough playoff games to.
Well, for a 4-year stretch, they made like what 4 straight Eastern Conference Finals.
So right. Okay. Mark Price?
No, right track though. Like, yeah.
Right vein. Okay. I feel like I got.
I can give it to you here shortly if you're.
Okay, give me one more hint.
Okay. The team he was on won a chip in the 80s, but he never played with Bird, Magic, or Isaiah Thomas.
Maurice Cheeks.
Yes.
Bang. Thank you.
Got you.
He played in the 90s?
Yeah, he played in the 90s, man. He played till like 94, yeah.
Oh wow. Damn. Okay.
Yeah, he was No, that was a hard ass one though. But I was kind of feeling like I gotta test you a little bit. Because I feel like Maurice Cheeks though do be the type of guy you would know.
Yeah, exactly. No, that was fair. Maurice Cheeks. Yo, yeah. No, those are all. No, you don't. We can't even argue that I wouldn't have. That's fair play.
All right,
I like it.
All right, I appreciate that. I was like, damn, I hope I didn't go too hard.
No, that was perfect. Damn, that was Maurice Cheeks.
It's like a weird, but I found the list. Okay, so like background, I found the list pretty fascinating. Like you don't see any newer guys who aren't like wings who play for a really long time. Like LeBron's kind of this exception. Like there's no real more recent players in and around the top 15 outside of like him and like CP3. It's just like CP3 has been around forever, right? But what I thought was interesting was like Bird's on that list, Magic's on that list, Manu's on that list, like. These are like very vast ranging like players, you know. Very equal opportunity. Yeah, and I thought that was like absolutely fine. And like Julius Erving being 11th, like because he also he didn't play enough years in the ABA for that to really like affect his
Right.
steal numbers, in my opinion.
Easy.
Um,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
but yeah, so with that, I mean, we got a quiz out of the way. We got a
Got
Celtics
it.
therapy session out of the way. We did unspeakable amounts of things to Jimmy Butler during this podcast.
In a good way
Yeah,
of praise. Yes. We heard some fantastic thought experiments,
very fantastic thought
relevant coaches
experiments.
in future franchises.
Um,
Man,
we went through a lot. This is a long ass podcast.
it,
This might be like an hour and 30 minutes.
yeah.
So thanks for whoever's still watching. Last thing, we got to talk about this. Did we talk about LeBron's retirement potential?
Oh yeah.
I forgot we did kind of need to touch on that. I hope he doesn't. I thought once that game ended, I was watching with some people, and that was like the first thing out of my mouth. I was like, "Is this LeBron's last game?" And I told you this too. Um, I don't think it will be. It wouldn't surprise me if it was.
Yeah. Hmm. Um, I hope it's not his last game. I also don't think it will be because I think he did talk about wanting to play with his son. He did recently have a quote, though. I'm sure you saw this. You know how he was talking about this is his son's path now and he's carving it for himself. And that's why he's so happy he's at USC.
Mhm.
And, obviously we don't know if Bronny does feel this way or doesn't feel this way, but we always talk about how much LeBron wants to play with his son. How much does LeBron's son want to play with
Bronny,
his dad?
yeah,
And maybe he really, really, really does. Maybe like he'd think that's really cool. He's a good player. He's going to be a good player. It used to be, oh, well, you draft Bronny, so you get a year of LeBron.
yeah.
An old LeBron, mind you, but still
Bronny
LeBron.
might be a lottery pick.
He might
Like,
be. And
yeah,
and so maybe there's less incentive to keep LeBron around. I was listening to Bobby Marks kind of explain some of the ways that if LeBron were to retire would work. And I think the most likely scenario would be that he is not allowed to, his contract is void and he's not allowed to join the league again for another year. Essentially, so he'd be
that's
taking a year off. Um,
ex-
and
yes,
so that's,
that's accurate.
and
So,
there's one. Yeah. Go on.
so just quickly, like, if you retire and you don't have a contract, obviously it doesn't really matter. No one owes you money. But the team
Yeah.
that had your bird rights, like if you played for a team for 3 years and then you retire, when you come back for retirement, that team can go over the cap to re-sign you if they want to. So that's one thing. So that's kind of interesting. But you'd still represent like a certain cap number depending on your last contract. But if you retire in the middle of your contract, unless the team agrees to your release or anything, if you're willing to not make any money from the NBA for that year, after that year, your contract is void. During that year, you can actually apply for reinstatement. It's just the team that had you previous can veto it, which I anticipate would happen in any situation like that.
Yeah.
But it's very, very fascinating. And he would then be a free agent. And that's a good way to if he wanted to reload for a year, go to whatever team he wanted to, Bronny out of college. Maybe he doesn't want to make the max. Maybe he doesn't even need to make a max money. If I'm LeBron, I'm probably making more money on the side.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see it happening. That's my theory.
Right. And it's an interesting way of thinking. He can take a step back. He can, and he's old now. He needs time. I mean, we don't even know what's good with his foot, but I know it's not good. That's for sure. And so the fact that he's been playing as well as he has with what I'm certain is some awful foot thing, the number of times this dude has rolled his ankle in a tough way in these last couple of series, and he literally goes and then just keeps playing basketball. It's crazy.
He got dead legged by the screen yesterday. Like he like couldn't walk after that. I was like, dude,
just like, oh, okay.
yeah.
And then gets
And
back.
and like he flops a lot. He flops a lot. Don't get me wrong, but
right.
he gets hit a lot.
He gets hit a lot.
That's also why he flops. Yeah.
The weird bounce where he like not only gets fouled way more, like that he actually gets fouled more than is called, but he also flops more than it's necessary.
Yeah,
So it offsets itself. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree.
So that'd be cool if he takes a year off and he surveys this where the league is and he surveys how good Bronny's looking and what kind of team might want to draft him. And then he's saying, okay, where's this team looking? Is Bronny a 21st pick? And the team that's drafting him, oh, they're actually pretty good. We got a lot of parity in the league right now. What are they building towards? What are they building to? Now I'm 40. Now I can kind of take more of a step back and play in a different way, and my body's healed again. It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see.
I also heard that they have this quote. He was like, I don't want to retire. I think I'm still better than 90 or 95% of NBA players. He doesn't call himself the best player in the league anymore.
Yeah.
He doesn't call himself like any of that anymore.
Yeah.
And
he's not.
That kind of makes me think he's going to retire. Like, that kind of makes me think, like, if you're not the best player of the league, even if you win a chip, that's probably not adding to your resume to the point where people are going to undoubtedly view you as the GOAT, even if you might think you are the GOAT, which if I'm LeBron, I would walk around thinking I was the GOAT. Like, no one's done stuff that I've done. Like, yeah.
Totally.
But in the court of public perception or the court of public opinion, like, he's kind of set. And is there really that much he can do without being a dominant force? Because I don't know if with a quote like that, it's almost like admitting he's not that dominant force anymore. Can he really add to his resume like he'd want to? And that's kind of where I was, because I was also watching the game yesterday. Like, he had it at certain points. He had it the first half. He looked amazing, but at some point, it just ran out of gas. It's kind of how I feel about the Warriors a little bit. They kind of ran out of gas. I kind of feel like LeBron just like, I know they were down 3-0 already and whatnot, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. There was no fear, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. They looked like they were, and I do think part of it's the injury, but that's also part of age. And when you get injured, you get slower, and especially when you're older, your injuries that when you're 28, LeBron James is going to just be able to play through and he'll be fine. And he can't do that as a 30-year-old. It'll be weird if he retires, man. And we'll have to have a podcast kind of commemorating, who he is and what he's been for the league. Because, man, we might need need a podcast series.
Yeah, we might need multiple parts because I mean,
for each franchise, and then one on a different thing and a different
All I'm saying is LeBron James made an NBA Finals when I was in 5th grade, and then didn't miss an NBA Finals till I was a freshman in college.
It's crazy.
Like,
it's
ridiculous. Crazy. Like, that's literally what happened, which is like insane. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed he sticks around. More LeBron is better than less LeBron. Also, though, last part, I feel like we could have seen this coming. They chalked all their assets completely. Even if they reload this year, they're not going to be like the favorites next year. So
no.
I could see it. This doesn't overly surprise me that these rumors are floating.
With the disclaimer that the Heat weren't even in the conversation of being an NBA champion this year. So just like we know in the NBA, anything can happen.
Of course, but do you think LeBron's sticking around for anything can happen basketball team?
No, probably not.
Yeah. He should just come to the Wizards. Honestly, take a year off, come to DC, baby. Yeah, dude, just like Michael Jordan, bro.
Yeah. Follow him around.
It'd be ridiculous. All right, well, with that, I think we covered everything. This was a special midweek episode because we didn't get you guys last week. We're gonna try to be more consistent with the weekly stuff, but we've been pretty consistent until last week, so I don't feel that bad. You know what I'm saying? I don't feel that bad.
Oh, yeah. I think we're doing pretty well.
Yeah. This is episode 10. Also, thanks to everyone who's watched. I think like lifetime we've had over like 300 total views, 200 total views.
Double digits.
It's actually, I think it's even more than that. So to be honest, it's kind of dope. We appreciate the love. This was a long ass podcast, and we hope that you guys get the chance to do other stuff too. So turn us off.
And we'll post again soon. And until then, we'll be here chilling and spitting hoops.